The iPhone 16 has had a huge internal redesign with a highly repairable battery and improved thermal management. This is the coolest iPhone in the entire 16 line in more ways than one. Oh, and you might have heard something about the new button. Last year's action button must have been so popular that Apple just kept adding them. Headphone jacks are still popular too, Apple, just saying. We'll be taking a closer look at what makes that haptic button tick in today's teardown. But before I take it apart, let's use X-ray vision to see what's inside. Powered by Lumafield vision, this is the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus. There's very little difference between the two models except for the upper and lower speakers and the battery. But let's take a closer look over here. The new L-shaped logic board wraps around the battery, and what's this? Did you spot it yet? Here's an iPhone 15 for comparison. The eagle-eyed among you might notice that one of the millimeter wave antennas in the body has made way for the camera control button on the iPhone 16. Will anyone mourn its demise? Probably not, but let us know in the comments if you notice any signal differences. I'm expecting to gain access to the internals through the back glass, just like every base model iPhone since the 14, and I'm gonna use Clampy to help me with that. The adhesive is still pretty strong on these newer iPhones, but Clampy's precision force application makes the task much easier. Using a pick to secure my entry point, I can make my way around with a few more picks, cutting the adhesive as I go. It's really important not to slide that pick too deep into the case, otherwise I'd risk cutting flex cables and breaking grounding pins. With the case open, I can remove one of the logic board's shielding brackets and disconnect the back glass housing the flash and wireless charging assembly. Before we set it aside, let's take a closer look at that rear panel. Zooming in with a little help from our friends at Evidence Scientific, we can see just what gives that rear panel its matte look and grippy feel. A little closer and, well, that's giving me the heebie-jeebies. Take a look at these trypophobia-inducing tiny bubbles if you're brave enough. With the internals of the iPhone 16 in view, I'm kinda curious to see whether we can see any differences that the CT scan might have missed. So let's go over to the 16 Plus and pop the back glass off. Now here's a side-by-side shot. We have a few obvious differences like the size of the batteries and a couple more subtle differences. The top and bottom speakers are different sizes, and the Taptic engine, while the same size, seems to secure itself to the frame at different points. But other than that, there's not much difference, and that'll be relevant later as some of those parts are actually cross-compatible between the two phones. But first I want to show you the thing I'm most excited about in this phone. This odd-looking silver tab is a little bit magic. You see, this battery, unlike every battery from as far back as I can remember, does not use pull tabs. This battery uses an adhesive that debonds on demand when you apply an electric current. Let me show you. First, disconnect the battery from the board. Place an alligator clip on the grounding screw next to the USB-C port, another alligator clip on our magical silver friend protruding from the battery, hook that up to a power source, I'm using 12 volts from our FixHub power station here, and wait a minute or so. Speaking of that power station, if you haven't heard, we just launched our latest product and we're super excited about it. Meet the FixHub Power Series Portable Soldering Station. It's a battery-powered portable soldering iron that can go from off to ready to solder in less than 5 seconds, and with this handy magnetic cap you can instantly make the hot iron safe to put back in your bag. I took the smart iron with me to a microsoldering school taught by none other than Jessa Jones, the world's leading microsoldering instructor. Now she has one impressive soldering setup, but this super small iron worked just as well as her professional equipment on all the jobs I used it for. You simply have to get your hands on it to see how easy soldering can be. We've got a link in the description if you want to check it out. Okay, back to that battery. Time's up, let's disconnect the power source, and sure enough, I had no trouble at all pulling this battery out. Apple says that this process can be safely performed with as much as 30 volts. So let's try it. We're powering it with 20 volts from our power station and it's utterly incredible. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined removing a glued-in battery in 5 seconds flat. Come to think of it, never would I have imagined that I'd be hot wiring an iPhone. This process is so clean that once you apply the current, you can use gravity for the rest of the work. The new adhesive under these batteries, which we strongly suspect is supplied by TISA, is a layered structure with epoxy laced with an electrically conductive liquid. This special glue has a very useful reaction when it comes into contact with electricity. The adhesive sits inside a well in the frame, specially machined to create ridges and rough surfaces for the glue to adhere to. A close-up under the microscope really brings this simple but beautiful structure to life. When fed a current, an electrochemical reaction forces the adhesive surface touching the negative side to disengage completely by breaking the ionic bonds that form adhesion. Does that mean if you reverse the polarity, it'll rebond the battery? No, not quite. You'll still detach the battery, but the adhesive will remain on the frame instead of the battery. Unless you love cleaning up glue, make sure you hook this up correctly. Let's take a closer look at the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus battery. They both have the serviceable by a trained technician label on them. Don't worry, go read Apple's manuals released on day one, how cool is that, or one of our guides, and you too can be a trained technician. I want to pop that screen off the housing before we go any further, mostly because it's an isolated component and the only one accessible from the front. This dual entry system is a great design choice for repairability, and we're big fans of it here at iFixit. Much love for Apple for continuing this design choice. It's time to strip this phone down to its bare-bottomed case, starting with the Taptic engine. Both the Taptic engine and the lower speaker are independently removable immediately after removing the back glass. The lower microphone assembly sits one layer lower in the assembly tree, but also comes away without much fuss. To gain access to that USB-C port, something not covered for replacement by Apple's official repair manual, first I need to remove this empty plastic piece that houses the SIM tray in international models. We've been sans SIM cards here in the US since the iPhone 14, and without a headphone jack since the iPhone 6S. Apple considers both to be a design revolution, but I'm not so convinced. With that bracket out of the way, I can finally start work on removing all the screws holding the USB-C ribbon cable assembly in place. There are a few of them, tri-point screws, standoff screws, and Phillips screws, but it's not too bad overall. Once the screws are out, it's just a simple matter of peeling the USB-C port away from the frame. Turning my attention to the upper assemblies, I need to start by removing the logic board shield at the top, right next to the neatly Apple-branded graphene sticker. The front-facing camera module is now free to remove, along with the main camera assembly sitting next to it. Both components are very accessible, making any potential repairs a cinch. Now below the millimeter wave antenna inside this phone sit a few press connectors that are going to electrically disconnect the upper assembly from the logic board. 6 screws and that entire assembly is out. Finally, with a few standoff screws out, I can remove the logic board from the frame. Decapping and splitting the logic board sandwich takes a bit of doing, but thankfully I can recall some of my training at Jess's board repair school. But we're not done. Remember that camera button? Of course you do. Tech reporters haven't stopped talking about the camera button because, you know, everything else on the outside is exactly the same as last year. So how does that camera button work? And more importantly, was it worth losing the millimeter wave antenna over? The cable assembly underneath the new camera button has an interesting new component that, zooming in, reveals itself to most likely be a tiny pressure sensor, which would help detect whether you're fully depressing the button to take a picture or only half pressing it. Very cool and very intricate. The physical camera button that remains in that case can only be removed by breaking 2 weld points. Why would you want to break those weld points? Well, our fancy new camera button has its own freaking IC. I have questions, like how on earth are you supposed to repair this button without breaking the phone? Keep an eye out for our chip ID to find out exactly what IC this is. The hype train has been solely focused on the new camera control button, but the real big story on the iPhone 16s is actually its repairability. For the first time since the iPhone 5, the majority of parts inside the iPhone can be freely replaced with other OEM parts. There's a couple of exceptions to this. Apple's already said that they intend to lock down Face ID hardware for security reasons, and it's not yet clear whether Apple intends to play nice with third-party hardware. But this is overall still a huge win for DIY repair. Apple definitely seems to be leveling up on repairability, and they've landed another repair win in both base model iPhones, the new battery removal procedure. With the exception of highly repairable devices like the Fairphone, I'm not sure we've ever had a battery removal process go so cleanly and so smoothly. So what's next? Well, what if the entire iPhone could come apart as easily as the battery? If Apple used this new tech to open the phone, it would revolutionize the electronics industry. The iPhone 16 design has a lot going for it. We're still huge fans of the dual entry design Apple first used in the iPhone 14, and while the iPhone 16 is a complex device to work on, you can repair it on your own with the right tools and instructions. Apple has really stepped up by publishing repair manuals right on day one, and by finding an adhesive release solution that works with off-the-shelf tools. We expect a decent offering of replacement parts will also eventually become available. As far as their new diagnostic software is concerned, it's a bit more mixed. In our testing of the iPhone 14s, 15s, and the new base model 16s, we found that we could swap parts back and forth between phones and calibrate those parts natively on the device. A lot of people at Apple and their suppliers put in a lot of time to make this phone easy to repair, and this technician for one really appreciates it. All things considered, the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus score a provisional 7 out of 10 on our repairability scale.